The movie begins with the poor Kim family in Seoul. Unemployed father Kim Ki-taek, mother Chung-suk, their son Ki-woo and daughter Ki-jung living in a small semi-basement apartment, struggling to survive and trying to make a living. The family survives by taking on low-paying jobs such as folding pizza boxes, and they steal Wi-Fi from their neighbors to stay connected. This makes them to sit near the bathroom window so they can get better Wi-Fi signal. But their effort is interrupted by the pest control workers fumigating the neighborhood, causing toxic bug poison to seep into their living space through the open window. One evening, Ki-woo's friend Min-hyuk visits them and brings a large crafted rock from his grandfather's collection as a gift, claiming it will bring luck and prosperity. He also brought a job opportunity to Ki-woo as an English tutor for a rich family's daughter, since he is leaving to study abroad and wants Ki-woo to teach the girl and take care of her while he is away. It turns out Min has feelings for the girl, says he will officially ask her out when she enters university. He tells Ki-woo not to worry as he is confident in Ki-woo's English knowledge and his recommendation should be enough to get him hired. Ki-woo's sister, Ki-jung, is skilled at design programs, so she creates a fake university document for him. Father wishes him good luck and tells him that he is proud of him. Holding the forged document in his hand and dressed in his best clothes, Ki-woo says to his father that all of this is temporary, and he will enter the university next year. He arrives at a beautiful lavish park mansion located in the fancy part of the city, where he is greeted by the housekeeper Moon Kwang. Ki-woo is impressed by the view of the house, and the housekeeper mentions that the house was designed by a famous architect who lived here before the current owners. He is interviewed by Mrs. Park. As Min mentioned, she tells Ki-woo she doesn't care about the documents. After all, he is recommended by Min and she trusts him. She expresses how much their family likes Min and feels very sad that he is leaving all of a sudden. She then insists on participating in his first class to see if he can teach her daughter. While teaching Dae, Ki-woo notices that she is feeling nervous, so he gently takes her wrist and offers some advice on how to pass the exam, trying to make her feel comfortable. This helps Dae to soften and feel more comfortable during the lesson. Mrs. Park is very impressed by Ki-woo's teaching, so she hires him and immediately pays him. She then properly introduces Ki-woo to the housekeeper Moon Kwang and her playful son, Da-song, creating a warm and welcoming atmosphere. She complains that her son is easily distracted and can barely sit still. Therefore she enrolled him in scout classes last year, hoping he would learn self-control and focus, but unfortunately it didn't help and now he is even worse. Ki-woo says he also likes scouting and considers himself a scout by nature. Mrs. Park then mentions that Da-song is an artist by nature and proceeds to show him his painting. While leaving, Mrs. Park explains that they've been through many art teachers, because her son is very difficult to control. Discovering Mrs. Park's struggle in finding a suitable art teacher for her son, Ki-woo comes up with an idea and suggests his cousin's classmate, Jessica, a professional art teacher who studied in the United States and recently returned to Korea, who in reality is his sister Ki-young. Ki-woo brings Ki-jung to Mrs. Park's house on the appointed day. As they are getting acquainted and discussing Mrs. Park's son Da-song, Dae secretly watches them. During the lesson, Dae says Jessica is very beautiful and thinks she is Ki-woo's girlfriend. Expressing her jealousy, Ki-woo insists that he just met her and has no interest in her, and they ended up kissing. During Jessica's first lesson, Mrs. Park wants to watch Jessica teaching her son, but Jessica rejects her request, stating that she never teaches in the presence of parents, making Mrs. Park nervously wait downstairs. After the class, Mrs. Park is surprised to see how well-behaved her son is. Jessica shows Mrs. Park her son's painting, pointing to an area where she can see psychotic symptoms, tells her that Da-song had experienced a psychological trauma in the past. This leaves Mrs. Park shocked and speechless. Jessica asks for high salary because her role involves not only tutoring but also providing therapy. Impressed by Jessica's professionalism, Mrs. Park gladly hires her. Shortly after, Mr. Park arrives. He gets to know Jessica and asks his driver to give her a ride. While on the road, the driver keeps hitting on Ki-jung, not wanting him to see her poor neighborhood. She tells him she will get off at a certain station to meet her boyfriend. Then she gets an idea and takes off her underwear, placing them under the seat of Mr. Park's car. As planned, Mr. Park discovers the underwear in his car and is disappointed with the driver. He comes home and complains to his wife about his discovery, expressing deep disappointment. He suspects that his driver has been engaging in intimate activities in his car. He even suspects the driver of taking drugs, as he finds it difficult to believe that someone in their clear mind would forget their underwear in the car, so they decide to get him fired for some other reason to avoid any conflict. While leaving after the class, Mrs. Park tells Jessica that a small incident happened and asks for her opinion about the driver, so she gives her a hint that the driver made advances towards her. Trying to get the job for her father, Jessica says she prefers older drivers because they drive better and have better manners. She then recommends her father's brother, Uncle Kim, by describing his positive qualities, who in reality is her father Ki-taek. Without any experience driving luxury cars, Ki-taek prepares by learning about the car with his son's help at a car dealership. Dressed sharply and with polite manners, he meets Mr. Park at his office. Together, they head out for a test drive. As they drive, Ki-taek tries to impress Mr. Park. Mr. Park is impressed by his good manners and smooth driving skills. Navigating the roads without needing GPS, he decides to hire him on the spot. As the Kim family settles into their new jobs with the wealthy Park family, they encounter their last challenge. The housekeeper Moon Kwang, who has been working and living in the house since the previous owner. She won't give up a good job easily, so they need to prepare well and have a better plan. One day, Ki-woo finds out that peaches are forbidden in the house because Moon Kwang is severely allergic to them. So they begin to put peach fuzz on her hair and clothes without her noticing, causing her to feel sick. Moon Kwang goes to the hospital for a checkup since she believes her illness is not caused by allergies. Ki-taek is also in the hospital as planned. He takes a selfie with Moon Kwang in the background, then tells Mrs. Park that he accidentally saw Moon Kwang at the hospital and overheard that she has tuberculosis while showing her the selfie, trying his best to make Mrs. Park believe him. Ki-taek sends a message to Ki-jung shortly before arriving. Ki-jung throws peach fuzz on Moon Kwang, causing her to cough severely in front of Mrs. Park. Ki-taek then puts ketchup on the tissue to make it look like she's been coughing blood. Shocked Mrs. Park makes Ki-taek to promise her that he won't tell her husband, and she doesn't want her husband to know that they have a sick employee in the house. She fires Moon Kwang for some other reason and tells her husband that she gave up the job. Mr. Park says he appreciated Moon Kwang's service even though she ate too much, and now he is worried about the cooking and cleaning in the house, saying it's hard to find a good housekeeper. Ki-taek gives him a business card of a prestigious company, saying that they offer various services with reliable employees. When Mrs. Park calls the number on the card, Ki-jung answers the phone pretending to be the secretary of the company and speaks to her as if she's handling official business. Eventually, Chung-suk becomes the new housekeeper, and the entire Kim family is employed in the household. Da-song notices that they all smell the same, almost revealing who they are. At home, they realize their smell is the smell of their cheap semi-basement apartment, and they offer a prayer of gratitude towards Mr. Park for providing them with employment and decide to have a small celebration. On Da-song's birthday, the Park family goes on an overnight camping trip, leaving Chung-suk behind to take care of the house. The Kim family takes advantage of this opportunity to enjoy the house. They use and explore every room and have a wonderful time. Ki-woo finds Daehae's diary and decides read it. In the evening, they have a drunken party in the living room. Ki-woo admits that he's been dating Daehae for some time and says that he is planning to officially ask her out when she enters university. In the middle of their celebration, they are interrupted by a sudden ring of the doorbell. The old housekeeper, Moon Kwang, shows up, saying that she left something in the basement, insists on being let in. Chung-suk lets her in while the other Kims hide. She heads towards the basement and opens a secret bunker door hidden behind a furniture, revealing her husband Gun-se. Turns out her husband has been living in the bunker for 4 years, saving his life hiding from the debt collectors. Moon Kwang explains the Park family has no knowledge of the bunker because previous owner was a famous architect and was a bit embarrassed, so he didn't mention it. Chung-suk threatens them to call the police, while the other Kims are secretly listening to their conversation. Ki-woo's foot slips and the whole family falls down, revealing their true identity by calling each other father and son. Moon Kwang quickly takes her phone and records everything. After learning who they are in reality, she threatens the Kims that she will send the video to Mrs. Park. Getting the upper hand, Moon Kwang and her husband enjoy themselves in the living room while the Kims are kept like hostages. After a moment, while Moon Kwang is mocking and making fun of the Kims, Chung-suk smashes into the couch and knocks her down. A fierce fight for the cell phone breaks out, during which Ki-jung quickly grabs a peach and rubs it on Moon Kwang's face, while Ki-taek holds her husband. Eventually, Ki-woo manages to take the cell phone and deletes the recording. The chaos is stopped by a phone call from Mrs. Park, who informs Chung-suk that their camping trip has been ruined by the heavy rain, so they are returning home and will arrive very soon. In panic, Ki-taek and Ki-woo take Moon Kwang and her husband to the bunker, while Ki-jung is cleaning up the mess and Chung-suk is busy preparing some food requested by Mrs. Park. When Parks enter the house, Ki-jung hides under the living room table. Ki-woo, attempting to return to Daehae's diary, hides under her bed, while Ki-taek remains in the bunker. Moon Kwang breaks free and rushes up to the kitchen, but Chung-suk kicks her, causing her to fall down the basement stairs and severely injuring her head. In the bunker, Gun-se shows Ki-taek how he expresses his gratitude to the Park family by sending out whole sentences in a scout language, also known as Morse code, using the dining room light switch located in the bunker. But Mrs. Park thinks the light sensors are broken, as she eats and tells Chung-suk how her son Da-song was traumatized by seeing a ghost coming up from the basement stairs. But in reality, he just saw Moon Kwang's husband coming up to the kitchen. Ki-taek ties up Gun-se and Moon-kwang and goes up to the kitchen. As they see an opportunity and are about to leave, Da-song comes down the stairs to camp in the yard. Almost caught by Da-song, they all hide under the table in the living room. Mr. Park suggests his wife to sleep on the couch so they can keep an eye on their son together. He also mentions smelling Mr. Kim, unaware that he is right under them, and makes some negative comments about his smell. After they fall asleep, Kim's managed to leave the house, but Ki-taek nearly gets caught when Da-song wakes his parents through the radio transceiver. After arguing for a while under the heavy rain, father says he has a plan and will take care of everything. They run back to their home, only to find out their situation is even worse when they see their semi-basement apartment is flooded. They take whatever they can, Ki-woo carrying his lucky rock. They spend the night taking shelter in a crowded gymnasium along with other displaced citizens. Ki-woo asks his father about his plan. Ki-taek acknowledges that sometimes there is nothing they can do to change what has happened, and therefore, his plan is simply to leave the situation as it is and move forward. Back in the bunker, Moon-kwang regains consciousness and reunites with her husband, then unties him, but not long after she dies from her concussion, leaving her husband in misery. The following day, after the failed birthday trip, Mrs. Park decides to throw a party for her son and invites the Kims to come over and help them prepare. After the frustrating night, the Kims feel disheartened because they believe the Parks are completely unaware of the struggles of ordinary people. Ki-taek is particularly upset when both Mrs. and Mr. Park make negative comments about his smell. During the party, Mr. Park asks Ki-taek to help him surprise his son by dressing up as Indians, rudely claiming that it is part of his job. In the house, after spending some time with Dae, Ki-woo takes the rock downstairs with the intention of killing Gun-se. But unexpectedly Gun-se attacks him and knocks him down, then hits him on the head with the rock several times. Then heads out to the yard and crashes the party by stabbing Ki-jung in the chest. Da-song passes out after encountering the ghost and experiencing his traumatic memory again. In just seconds, the birthday party turns into a chaos with everyone screaming and guests fleeing. Ki-taek rushes to Ki-jung, trying to save her by stopping her bleeding, while Mr. Park yells at him that they need to take Da-song to the hospital. But Ki-taek throws the key and it lands under fighting Gun-se and Chung-suk. Chung-suk ends up killing Gun-se with a meat skewer, and Mr. Park picks up the key but is disgusted by Gun-se's smell. Seeing Mr. Park's reaction to the smell and recalling his comments about his own, Ki-taek loses control and fatally stabs Mr. Park, then runs away. Weeks later, Ki-woo wakes up in the hospital and narrates that his sister Ki-jung died from her injuries, while he had to undergo brain surgery and was in a coma for weeks. He and his mother Chung-suk go to trial and luckily just received probation as their sentence. Later, when the detectives and news went silent, while observing the Parks mansion from a nearby hill, Ki-woo notices the dining room light flickering. It turns out to be a Morse code message from Ki-taek, who managed to hide in the bunker during the chaos. Through the message, he tells Ki-woo that he is doing okay and that he has properly buried Moon-kwang in the yard. He also informs him that a German family has bought the house unaware of its history. Ki-woo then promises to get rich one day to purchase the house and reunite with his father. Dreaming of their reunion, he concludes his letter while sitting in their semi-basement apartment where the story began.